the Indiana Fever, congratulations, you four. You guys have successfully broken Caitlin Clark. Great job. You guys have tried your damnedest to turn her into a role.
Let me say this slowly and clearly so every single person watching this video understands exactly what is happening. The Indiana Fever did not just mismanage Caitlin Clark. They did not just make a few bad rotations or run a few wrong plays. What this organization has done, deliberately, systematically, and with full awareness of what they were doing, is take the most electrifying, most valuable, most generationally gifted basketball player on the face of this earth and methodically break her. Congratulations, Stephanie White. Congratulations, Kelly Krauskopf. Congratulations, Amber Cox. You did it. You took the golden goose of the entire women's basketball universe, and you spent an entire season squeezing the life out of her one rotation decision at a time. Stand up and take your bow, because what you have accomplished is genuinely historic, just not in any way you should ever be proud of. Subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and let us tear every single layer of this disaster completely apart.
Bro, yeah, these networks get exactly what they asked for. They get exactly what they get every penny of what they asked for. But when she doesn't go rogue, when she plays within the system, when she gets subbed out 3 minutes into the game, and then plays for a few minutes, then subbed out again, and then plays for a few minutes, then subbed out again.
What we are watching in real time is not just a coaching philosophy disagreement. It is not a style mismatch between a veteran coach and a young player still finding her professional footing. What we are watching is the deliberate, calculated, systematic dismantling of a generational talent by an organizational structure that is more threatened by her success than motivated by it. Stephanie White, Kelly Krauskopf, and Amber Cox have made a collective decision, whether consciously or through sheer organizational incompetence, to force the most dangerous, most creative, most unstoppable point guard in basketball history into a rigid, suffocating, outdated system that was not designed for her and was never going to work for her. They took a tsunami and told it to flow through a garden hose. And then they went to press conferences and acted confused about why the water was not moving. But here is what makes this situation so much bigger than bad basketball decisions. Here is what elevates this from a struggling team story into something that will be discussed in sports business classrooms for the next 20 years. The surface-level dysfunction, the rotations, the substitution patterns, the post-entry obsession, that is just what you can see. What happens underneath that surface is what will define this entire era of women's basketball.
Once you get rid of those four and you get rid of your stooge of an agent, Aaron Kane, you'll be free. And I know we don't want her to go the LeBron route, but at this point, you need to get rid of Aaron Kane and you need to call Rich Paul immediately.
Let us start with the broadcast partners because this is where the financial reality becomes impossible to ignore. CBS, NBC, and USA Network did not write historic checks for WNBA broadcasting rights to watch a generational superstar sit on the bench 3 minutes into the first quarter. They did not negotiate premium deals to broadcast a micromanaged, creativity-suppressed, rotation-confused version of the most watched player in women's sports. They paid for the deep perimeter shooting that leaves defenders frozen. They paid for the gravity-defying passes that make highlight reels go viral at midnight. They paid for the chaotic, brilliant, completely unpredictable magic that happens when Caitlin Clark takes total control of a basketball game and simply plays. When she operates freely, when the system is actually built around what she does, she drives viewership numbers that this league has never seen before in its entire existence. And the coaching staff's response to that reality has been to actively, stubbornly, almost spitefully discourage exactly that. Every time she gets subbed out at the 6.5-minute mark. Every time she comes back in, finds her rhythm, and gets pulled again. Every time the ball gets forced inside to a post player averaging less than 10 minutes a game, network executives are watching. League executives are watching. And they're asking the same question that every informed basketball mind is asking right now. What exactly is going on in Indianapolis?
Y'all need to listen to this real quick.
Let up at all. They're going to stay full. They're going to be disruptive. I think for us, I think we got to get the ball inside to our post players. I think that's one way, or one key to the game that will help us win, is to get AB and Mo and really.
Now let us look at the actual basketball strategy being run here, because the specifics are genuinely maddening. The directive coming from this coaching staff: get the ball inside to the post players, run it through Aaliyah Boston and Monique Billings, completely ignores one fundamental reality about this roster. Monique Billings is averaging less than 10 minutes per game. Aaliyah Boston, as talented as she is still developing her consistency, finishing through contact at the rim. These are the players this coaching staff wants to build the offensive system around. Meanwhile, you have a guard on your roster who commands double teams from 30 feet away from the basket. 30 feet. Most players in the history of this league cannot force a defensive adjustment from 30 feet. Caitlin Clark does it on every single possession she touches the floor. The correct response to that gravity, the response that every legitimate offensive basketball mind on earth would immediately implement, is high pick and roll basketball that exploits exactly that defensive attention. You run actions that weaponize the fact that two defenders are always thinking about her location. You do not run post-entry sets that make her a spectator. You do not sub her out at the 6.5-minute mark every single game like clockwork and then explain it away with rotation philosophy that does not survive 30 seconds of statistical scrutiny.
Stephanie White on why Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark subbed out at the 6:30-minute mark, after which Portland went on a 13-2 run. Well, AB is still on a minutes restriction, so that's why she's coming out, and that's typically around the same time that we've taken Clark out before. None of that is good at all. None of that is good at all. But again, wait, why are you specifying AB's on a minute restriction, but you're not specifying Caitlin Clark's on a minute restriction? Explain, please. We did it in Golden State because, quite honestly, we didn't want Raven in that environment without another ball handler on the floor, but that's been our tip.
And the press conference explanations for these decisions deserve their own separate conversation because they reveal something deeply troubling about how this coaching staff actually thinks. Stephanie White was asked directly, why were Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark both subbed out at the 6:30 mark against Portland right before the team went on a 13-2 run? Her answer was that Aaliyah Boston is on a minutes restriction. Fine, that explains Boston. But then, in the same breath, she admitted there was no minutes restriction on Caitlin Clark. She pulled her primary ball handler at the exact same moment with zero medical or load management justification. And her explanation for that decision was that it had simply become the team's typical substitution pattern. Think about what that actually means. The coaching staff has created a habit of removing their franchise player from the game at a specific time regardless of game flow, regardless of momentum, regardless of score, regardless of what is actually happening on the court. Think about the engine analogy for one moment. You start your car. You let the engine warm up. You get it running smooth. And then the second it hits its operating temperature, the second it is actually ready to perform at full capacity, you turn it off and let it sit and cool back down. And then you wonder why you cannot get anywhere. That is the Indiana Fever offensive philosophy in its entirety. They build momentum, establish rhythm, create a lead, and then they methodically dismantle every condition that produced it.
But I'm gonna use it anyway. Folks, you mow your lawn. What do you do before you mow your lawn? You start your engine. And what do? You let that engine warm up because it needs to warm up. Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, they're your engines. You gotta start that engine, let them warm up. 3.5 minutes is enough to let them warm up. They finally get into a rhythm, you get an 8-4 lead, 8-2 lead, and you take them out. Oh, now they gotta start their engine again. But now we're not starting our engine to begin the game. Now we're starting our engine in the rhythm of a game of momentum we've already lost. This is coaching malpractice.
But here is the dimension of this story that almost nobody in mainstream media is addressing directly, and it is the most important piece of this entire puzzle. The silence from Caitlin Clark's current representation during all of this is deafening. Erin Kane and the current agency structure around her have watched this organizational mismanagement unfold in real time, on national television, in press conferences, in leaked rotation reports, and the response has been essentially nothing. No coordinated media pushback. No leverage being applied behind closed doors. No public positioning that communicates to this organization that their treatment of their franchise player has consequences. Now contrast that silence with how a true powerhouse sports agency operates. If Rich Paul and Clutch Sports were managing the situation right now, the entire dynamic would be different. Hit pieces do not go unanswered when Clutch is involved. Organizational decisions that affect a client's market value get met with immediate, coordinated, strategic responses that remind front offices exactly who holds the real leverage in the relationship. Right now, the Indiana Fever front office has been completely emboldened by the absence of that pushback. They have learned that they can bench Caitlin Clark, publicly question her defensive assignments, claim a backup point guard makes them a better team, and face zero institutional consequences for any of it. That absence of consequences is a representation failure, and it is directly enabling everything else we are watching. Here is what makes this situation genuinely unprecedented in the modern era of professional sports. This organization lucked into a generational economic engine. They did not build toward this. They did not draft strategically for a decade to position themselves for this moment. The basketball universe handed them the most transformative player in the history of their league, a player who single-handedly shifted the entire paradigm of women's basketball before she ever touched a professional court, and their response has been to treat her like a secondary piece in a mid-tier rebuilding project. The fundamental disconnect lies in how the Indiana Fever organization views their own timeline versus how the rest of the basketball world views it. The front office is operating on an antiquated developmental model built on the belief that dues must be paid, that veteran hierarchy must be respected regardless of talent disparity, and that offensive systems must be proved out over multiple seasons before any player earns complete autonomy. History tells us something completely different. When a player possesses the rare ability to tilt the entire geometry of a basketball court, to make 5 defenders simultaneously account for her location on every single possession, you do not ask her to neatly fit your existing playbook. You burn the playbook. You start over. You build everything from scratch around the gravitational force you have been given. You have been handed a tsunami, and your job is to build the infrastructure that lets it move at full power. And now we need to talk about the psychological dimension of this situation, because it is the most disturbing part of everything happening in Indianapolis. The constant, unpredictable substitutions. The confusing off-ball assignments that leave her standing at the three-point line watching post-up sets develop. The public declarations from the coaching staff that the team plays faster with a backup point guard running the offense. These are not just strategic miscalculations in a long season. They are deliberate, methodical, ongoing public votes of no confidence that chip away at a player's competitive instincts one game at a time. And the reported involvement of a team sports psychologist in messaging designed to help Caitlin Clark accept this artificially diminished role should alarm every single person who cares about this player's long-term development. The internal messaging is not about empowering a superstar to demand the structure she needs. It is about compliance. It is about conformity. It is about suppressing the exact competitive aggression that made her the most valuable player in this league before she played a single professional minute. This is not player development. This is a masterclass in how to extinguish a championship fire from the inside. The financial implications of what is happening extend far beyond this one franchise and this one season. The WNBA is currently navigating the most important business moment in its entire history: television rights negotiations, expansion drafts, a collective bargaining agreement opt-out that will define the economic structure of women's basketball for the next decade.